Section 7 of Joseph in the Snow and the Clockmaker, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. Read by Dodie. Joseph in the Snow and the Clockmaker, Volume 1 by Berthold Auerbach. Translated by Grace Jane Wallace. Chapter 7. The Home of Schilder-David. "Woe's me, Legart!" had been the exclamation of little Joseph as that good woman entered, for which want of civility his grandfather gave him a hearty box on the ear. The boy began to cry, and his grandfather to scold, and Martina both to scold and to cry. For David would not even allow her to soothe the boy by a single kind word, and Legart said in a sensible tone of voice, though certainly with rather a nasal twang, "It is really too bad to meet with such a welcome. I ought to go away again immediately. It is enough to make one superstitious, but whatever we do, let us all at all events avoid superstition. Nothing in the world is so dreadful, for people plague themselves perpetually about things they do not see, and I am sure we have all plague enough with the things we do see, so I shall stay where I am. Good morning, Joseph. Say good morning to me prettily. There, now shake hands." "The boy slept very badly last night and does not know what he is saying," said Martina, in order to excuse the child. "Make no apology to me, and let us say no more about it," said Legart, placing on the table in formidable array a solid pincushion consisting of a heavy brick covered with cloth, a pair of scissors with a large and a small handle, and a smaller pair, a stock of pins and needles, and a tiny wax taper. She thereby took possession of the house for the day, and regulated it accordingly from her throne, for she never rose again from her seat till she went away late at night. Before, however, she settled in her place for the day, she went into the next room and returned shorn of her upper petticoat, for she was never seen in the street without being very neatly dressed, but she was anxious not to spoil her best gown by sitting on it. When she came into the room again, she pushed the table into a comfortable corner, seated herself, and Martina placed a footstool under her feet, and now Legart gave her orders in few and distinct words, and commenced by saying, "Martina, get breakfast." Martina brought in the oatmeal porridge and placed it on the table. Joseph said grace, and out of a stock of prayers he selected on this occasion the shortest. "May God give food to all poor children on earth. Amen." Joseph had dried his tears and was seated between his grandfather and grandmother, and after grace was said, all were as quiet as possible at table. Each helped himself with his own spoon out of the dish, and there were no disputes as to precedence. The room was perfectly clean and tidy, though small and poor. Above the stove, just over the substantial old easy-chair, there was a large nail with a brass head stuck in the wall, on which once upon a time Martina's certificate of confirmation had hung. But nothing hung from it now. Martina always avoided looking at it, and David had given strict orders that the nail was not to be removed. The head of the house, Schilder-David, was a man advanced in years, but it was difficult to know his exact age. His hair was thick, closely cropped, and snow-white, but his face, encircled by a snowy beard, had rather a youthful appearance, especially his deep blue eyes and dark eyebrows, which appeared not to harmonize with the rest of his features. His wife was tall and slender, but very little of her face was visible, for she invariably wrapped her head in thick handkerchiefs, and when she did speak, the sounds she uttered were apparently brought forth with such difficulty that it was evident she did not hear even her own voice. The sempstress, Legart, was a delicate, pale, rather superior-looking person, somewhat advanced in life, but still preserving traces of extreme beauty. Moreover, her manner was always gentle and polite. Her black cloth jacket was only fastened at the throat and opened down to the waist, so that a white kerchief and still whiter skin were visible. Those who did not know the fact could scarcely perceive that she occasionally took a sly pinch, for she never showed her snuff-box, and took a pinch so neatly and quickly that it was almost imperceptible. It was difficult to believe that little Joseph was only just 6 years old, for he might easily be supposed 3 years older at least. His limbs were strong and finely formed, what the country people here call a well-grown lad. His hair was fair and curly, to which his marked eyebrows and dark eyes, his mother's eyes, formed a singular contrast. Little Joseph was, in fact, the central point of the family, and this was evident by the extreme confusion his strange welcome to Legard had caused. There was little said during the meal, but Legard mentioned that the pastor had been sent for on the preceding night to the Rotmannen. "We never speak of such a person here," said Schilder-David, giving a significant glance at Legard and then at Joseph. They all rose from the table. Joseph's measure was taken for his jacket, and then the outlines drawn with white chalk on the green cloth, and Legard's huge shears cut out the cloth on the table with a strange snapping sound. "Stay at home today. The millstream was frozen over," said David to Joseph, and went into his workshop, which was partitioned off aloft above the sawmill. There was here a turning lathe with a strap attached to a cylinder, and this was fastened to the spring wheel of the mill below, and the water power that impelled the large machine turned also the smaller one, at which David constructed his wooden watch dials and clock cases. Little Joseph was standing apart, as if in disgrace, when his grandfather, contrary to his usual custom, went out alone. Usually he took Joseph with him, and the boy supplied his furnace with chips and brought him rough pieces of wood for his work, taking away those that were finished and arranging them in good order. His mother took the boy with her into the kitchen, and there she asked him, "Joseph, what ails you today? Why did you exclaim so uncivilly, 'Woe's me, Legard? She is so kind to you, and your grandmother besides, and is making you a pretty new jacket.'" Not a word from Joseph. A child can scarcely remember what he said a few minutes previously, and can never recall the train of his ideas, and consequently cannot explain them. The words of children are like the songs of birds, devoid of rhythm, and yet emanating from a hidden life within. After a pause, Joseph began of his own accord to say, "Mother, is not my father to be here today? You told me so." "Yes, he will be here. He is sure to come, I think," answered Martina with a deep sigh. Now she understood why Joseph had been so disappointed on seeing Legard. No doubt when she threw open the door, Joseph expected to see his father, so he had called out, "Woe's me, Legard," simply because it was another person and not his father. Joseph went on talking and saying he knew his father would take him on his horse, and probably give him one of his own. Martina anxiously endeavored to divert the child's thoughts from his father, but she could not succeed. In the depression of her heart, she had too often made Adam a topic of conversation, and had frequently spoken her inmost thoughts to the boy, whose dawning intellect and thoughts were entirely concentrated on his father. He had formed the most singular ideas about him, and was perpetually asking why his grandmother persisted in plaguing his father, and preventing his coming home to them. "Which way will my father come today?" asked Joseph. "I don't know." "Yes, you do know, and you must tell me," said little Joseph, beginning to whimper, and his mother, drawing him closer to her, said, "Hush, hush! No one must overhear us. If you are quite good and quiet, I will tell you presently." The boy checked his sobs, and his mother began to tell him what pretty presents he was to get at Christmas, and asked him if there was anything he had particularly wished for. The boy cared for nothing but a horse. People had told him that his father had 14 horses in his stable. All attempts to distract his attention were vain. His thoughts were entirely concentrated on his father, and he repeated, "Tell me, which way will he come today?" The mother said in a subdued tone, "You must not tell a living creature one syllable about your father coming here today. Give me your hand on it. Not one word to any human being." The boy gave his mother his hand, and stared at her, his large eyes still swimming in tears. Martina said no more, for she thought she had pacified the child, but presently, with the most obstinate pertinacity, he began again, "Which way will he come? Tell me." There are several roads, but I think he will come through the valley and the wood. But now, not another word. You are not to plague me any more. Go and fetch some fir chips from the workshop." The boy went out to fetch the wood, and the mother thought, with quiet satisfaction, "He will one day be a true man. When he wants a thing, he will never rest till he gets it." She then went with the boy into the sitting room, but Legart said, "Send away Joseph, for we can't talk before the child." "Joseph, go to Hospilly and look at the new boots he is making for you," said the mother. Joseph did not want to go, but his mother persisted in sending him out of the house. The boy stood outside, looking very indignant and muttering, "When my father comes I will tell him all about it. I am not to stay anywhere, neither with my grandfather nor at home." Nevertheless, he did go to see Hospilly, and was as merry and good-humored as possible, for Hospilly loved the boy, and when he was tired of playing with his toys, he could always amuse him by talking to him. For a year past he had repeatedly promised to give Joseph a dog, and the boy was now very speculative as to what the animal was to be like, and what tricks it was to be taught. Hospilly had one capital pretext for the delay, which was that he would have to search some time before he could find a dog exactly answering Joseph's description, for it was sometimes large and sometimes small. At one time it had 4 white paws, at another all brown. At one moment it was to be a wolf dog, and the next a Spitz. In the meanwhile, Legart was talking to Martina, and could not comprehend why Martina was not more eager to ascertain whether her deadly foe had not at length quitted the world. She urged her to go to the parsonage to inquire what state the Rotmannen was in. "You know very well," said Martina, "that formerly our pastor was always glad to see me in his house, but not now. I can't go there without some pretext when he is at home." "Very well. In that case, go to my house, and on the chest of drawers with the mirror above it you will find a china soup tureen, and in it 3 nightcaps, which I have just made for the pastor's wife. Take them to her from me, and then you will hear how matters stand." Martina did as she told her. End of chapter 7.